Chapter 1. The Red Light. 7 months earlier, the rain came down in thin, silver lines that blurred the edges of everything. Cassandra Harrington hated driving in the rain. It made the world feel slower than it should be. Smeared headlights, cautious drivers, red lights that lasted forever. She tapped her fingers against the steering wheel of her black sedan, glancing at the digital clock on the dashboard. 6:42 p.m. They were late. Beside her, Lucas shifted in the passenger seat, one earbud dangling loose against his hoodie. "Mom," he said quietly, watching the intersection ahead. "It's red." "I can see that," Cassandra replied, distracted. Her phone lit up in the cup holder. The screen glowed bright against the dim interior. Preston Griffith. Even before she picked it up, her lips curved slightly. Lucas noticed. She reached for the phone, thumbs swiping the screen open. "Preston, dinner with the board went well. Meridian is closer than they think. I told you, we're unstoppable when we align properly." Another message followed seconds later. "Preston, I wish you were here instead of stuck in traffic." Cassandra exhaled a small laugh. Lucas turned his head slowly toward her. "Mom," he repeated, firmer this time, the light. The rain intensified, drumming harder against the windshield. The wipers swiped left and right in steady rhythm. Cassandra typed back quickly. "I'll call you when I get home." She didn't notice that the car in front of them had already moved forward and stopped again at the next line. She didn't notice the cross-traffic light turning green. She noticed only the final message. "Preston, you deserve more than what you settled for." The word sat on her screen like a promise. Cassandra smiled. The light ahead shifted from red to green, but not for her lane, for the other direction. Lucas saw it. His body tensed. "Mom," she pressed the gas. The world snapped. Headlights from the left. A horn, long and violent. Lucas screamed. Metal crushed like paper. Glass exploded inward. The impact spun the sedan halfway through the intersection before it slammed against the median barrier. For a moment, there was no sound except rain and the hiss of the engine. Then Lucas. Cassandra's voice trembled. Her airbag had deployed, powder dusting her blouse. Her ears rang. She tasted blood. "Lucas." The passenger side was caved in. Lucas wasn't screaming anymore. He was too still. His head leaned at an unnatural angle, blood trickling from a cut along his hairline. His legs were pinned beneath the crushed dashboard. "Lucas, answer me." He blinked once. "Mom, you ran it," he whispered. Sirens wailed in the distance. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Benjamin Harrington arrived 32 minutes later, his tie loosened, his usually composed face fractured by something raw and unguarded. Cassandra stood when she saw him. "They're still running scans," she said quickly. I think the brakes failed." Benjamin didn't respond. "Benjamin, it wasn't, I couldn't stop." The trauma surgeon approached, expression measured. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington?" Benjamin nodded. "Your son sustained significant spinal trauma. There's compression around the thoracic region. We've stabilized him, but... Cassandra's voice cracked. "He may experience partial paralysis. We won't know the full extent until swelling reduces." The words seemed to echo in the hallway. Partial paralysis. Benjamin closed his eyes briefly. "When can we see him?" he asked. "Now." Lucas lay pale against the white hospital sheets, wires and tubes threading from his small frame. His legs were immobile beneath the blanket. Benjamin stepped forward first, gripping the rail of the bed. "Hey, champ," he said softly. Lucas's eyes opened slowly. "Dad." Cassandra moved to the other side. "Baby, I'm so sorry. The brakes they didn't fail," Lucas murmured. Her breath caught. "You were texting," he said weakly. "You were smiling." Silence. Benjamin's eyes shifted toward Cassandra. She forced a strained laugh. "Lucas, sweetheart, you're confused. It happened so fast." Lucas didn't argue. He simply turned his gaze away from her. 2 days later, a police officer stood in their kitchen taking Cassandra's statement. "It was raining heavily," she said, hands wrapped tightly around a mug she wasn't drinking from. "The car didn't respond when I pressed the brakes." "Any distractions?" the officer asked. "No," she answered immediately. Benjamin stood near the window, listening. The officer scribbled notes. We'll run diagnostics on the vehicle. Cassandra nodded too quickly. That night, when Benjamin went upstairs to check on Lucas, he noticed Cassandra at the dining table with her laptop open and her phone connected by cable. Her fingers moved rapidly. "Insurance wants a timeline," she said without looking up. "I'm clarifying details." Benjamin's gaze dropped to the phone screen for half a second. A messaging app. Conversation thread open. Preston Griffith. Her thumb hovered over the delete option. She looked up and met Benjamin's eyes. Neither spoke. She pressed delete. The thread vanished. Physical therapy began 3 weeks later. Lucas hated it. The first time they transferred him from bed to wheelchair, he bit down on his lip so hard it bled. Cassandra tried to help steady him. He recoiled. "I've got it," Benjamin said calmly, lifting his son with careful strength. Lucas avoided looking at his mother. At night, when the house was quiet, Benjamin would stand in the hallway outside Lucas's room and listen. Sometimes he heard nothing. Sometimes he heard his son crying softly into a pillow. One evening, Benjamin entered the room with a glass of water. Lucas stared at the ceiling. "Dad, yeah, you saw her." Benjamin didn't pretend not to understand. "I saw," he replied. "She was smiling," Lucas said. Right before, Benjamin pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. "I know. Why is she lying?" Benjamin paused. "Because telling the truth would mean facing what she chose." Lucas swallowed. "I can't feel my legs right." Benjamin's hand tightened around his son's. "I know." Downstairs, Cassandra's phone buzzed again. Lucas flinched at the sound. Benjamin noticed. Weeks passed. Medical bills stacked neatly in folders on Benjamin's desk. Accident reports. Insurance forms. Vehicle diagnostics. The mechanic's report arrived quietly in the mail. Brake system. Fully functional. Benjamin read it once. Then again. He placed it inside a folder without comment. That evening at dinner, Cassandra attempted conversation. "Lucas, your therapist said you showed improvement today." Lucas stared at his plate. "That's great," she continued, forcing brightness. "See? Things are getting better." Lucas finally looked up, not at her, at Benjamin. Benjamin met his son's gaze steadily. Cassandra reached across the table instinctively, as if to touch Lucas's hand. He pushed his wheelchair back abruptly. The sound of metal against hardwood was sharp. He turned the wheels himself. Slowly, deliberately, and without a word, Lucas turned his wheelchair away from his mother. Chapter 2, Distance. Distance did not arrive all at once. It settled into the Harrington house like dust, thin, invisible at first, then coating everything. The wheelchair ramp had been installed 3 weeks after the accident. The contractor tried to make cheerful small talk while measuring the front steps. "Kids bounce back fast," he'd said casually. Benjamin had nodded. Lucas hadn't come outside to watch. The first scheduled physical therapy session was on a Tuesday morning. Cassandra stood near the hallway mirror, adjusting her blazer. "We should leave now. Traffic will be heavy." Lucas sat in the living room, motionless in his chair, staring at the television that wasn't turned on. "Lucas?" she prompted. No response. "Sweetheart, we don't want to be late." "I'm not going," he said flatly. Cassandra forced a smile. "Honey, you have to. That's how you get better." He didn't look at her. Benjamin stepped out of his home office, sleeves rolled to the forearms. "Why don't I take him?" Cassandra's jaw tightened slightly. "I can handle it." Lucas's hands gripped the wheels. "I'm not going with you," he said. The words were calm, not angry. Worse, final. Silence stretched across the room. Benjamin walked forward slowly, crouching so he was eye level with his son. "You don't have to decide anything right now," he said quietly. "But we're going to try. Just once." Lucas's eyes flickered to him. "Just you?" he asked. Benjamin nodded. Lucas hesitated, then gave a small, reluctant nod. Cassandra watched as Benjamin wheeled him toward the door. She stood alone in the living room long after the door shut. Physical therapy smelled like antiseptic and rubber mats. The therapist, a patient woman in her early 40s, introduced herself gently. "Hi, Lucas. I'm Aaron." Lucas didn't answer. Benjamin answered for him. "He's having a hard day." Lucas shot him a look, but said nothing. When it came time to attempt assisted standing, Lucas shook his head violently. No, it's okay, Aaron encouraged. We're just testing range of motion. No, his breathing quickened. Benjamin stepped forward. We can stop. Lucas's shoulders dropped slightly. On the drive home, he stared out the window. Mom thinks I'll just fix, he muttered. Benjamin kept his eyes on the road. Recovery isn't something you rush. She keeps smiling. Benjamin didn't reply. At home, Cassandra attempted optimism like it was medication. Aaron said consistency is key, she said that evening. If we stay disciplined, Lucas turned his wheelchair toward the hallway. Dinner's almost ready, she added brightly. I'll eat later. Lucas, don't be rude. He stopped. His hand trembled slightly on the wheel. Benjamin spoke calmly. Let him have space. Cassandra's phone buzzed against the marble countertop. Lucas flinched. It was small, barely noticeable. But Benjamin saw it. Cassandra picked up the phone quickly, angling the screen away from them. Work, she said. She stepped into the dining room to answer. Her voice lowered. Benjamin watched Lucas's jaw tighten. Weeks passed. Lucas spoke less. When he needed water, he asked Benjamin. When he needed help transferring from chair to bed, he called out Dad. The first time Cassandra tried to assist, placing her hands under his arms, he recoiled sharply. Don't. The word wasn't loud. It was controlled. Her hands dropped. I'm your mother. He stared past her. Benjamin stepped in without comment, lifting Lucas with steady strength. Cassandra stood beside the bed, useless. That night, she stayed in her home office until nearly midnight. Benjamin began noticing patterns the way he noticed irregularities in financial models, quietly, without announcing it. Cassandra's work nights extended later. Emergency strategy session, board prep, client dinner. The phrases rotated predictably. Her wardrobe changed too. New dresses appeared, sharper cuts, bolder colors. Designer boxes stacked discreetly in the closet. Benjamin said nothing when the credit card statement arrived. He simply reviewed it. Twice. A private restaurant downtown appeared 3 times in 1 month. A boutique hotel bar. Car service charges. He did not confront her. He observed. One evening, Lucas sat at the kitchen island working on school assignments. Cassandra breezed in at 9:30 p.m., heels clicking against hardwood. Sorry I'm late, she said, dropping her purse. Merger negotiations are intense right now. Lucas didn't look up. She approached him carefully. How was therapy? He continued writing. Lucas. Fine. That's it. Yes. Her phone vibrated again. Lucas's pen slipped in his hand. Cassandra glanced at the screen, then silenced it quickly. Benjamin was watching from the doorway. She offered an apologetic smile. It's just Preston. He's coordinating tomorrow's presentation. Lucas froze for half a second. Benjamin caught it. Cassandra walked toward the stairs, already typing a response. Lucas exhaled slowly once she disappeared. Dad, he said quietly, does work need a text at night? Sometimes, Benjamin replied. Lucas nodded, but didn't look convinced. The next Saturday, Benjamin found Lucas sitting alone in the backyard, staring at nothing. The autumn air was sharp. Cold out here, Benjamin said. Lucas shrugged. Benjamin sat beside him on the wooden bench. After a long pause, Lucas spoke. She didn't even drop the phone. Benjamin's chest tightened. She held it when we hit. The memory hung between them. Benjamin placed a steady hand on his son's shoulder. Inside, through the kitchen window, Cassandra laughed at something on her phone. Benjamin's eyes shifted toward the sound. He didn't move. Later that week, Cassandra announced another late dinner. It's critical, she insisted. This merger defines the firm's future. Benjamin nodded once. What's the CEO's name again? He asked casually. Preston, she replied automatically. Her tone softened when she said it. Lucas noticed. Benjamin noticed that Lucas noticed. When Cassandra left, Lucas wheeled himself toward the staircase, struggling slightly with the turn. Need help? Benjamin asked. I've got it. He didn't. Benjamin stepped in anyway, steadying the chair without comment. Upstairs, after Lucas was asleep, Benjamin returned to his office. He closed the door. He opened the credit card statements again, then the car diagnostics report, then the insurance transcript. He created a folder on his laptop. He labeled it simply, documentation. Inside, he began organizing. Dates, times, expenses, work schedules. He wasn't angry. Anger was loud. This was something else. Measured, deliberate. He opened another browser tab, typed in the name of Cassandra's firm, scrolled, executive leadership page, board of directors. He read carefully, cross-referenced, saved PDFs. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Upstairs, Cassandra's phone buzzed again. Benjamin didn't look toward the sound this time. He simply adjusted his glasses slightly, leaned closer to the screen, and continued accessing corporate filings late at night. Chapter 3. The Dinner. The house was unusually quiet that evening. Lucas had gone upstairs early, claiming exhaustion after therapy. The rhythmic sound of the stair lift echoed faintly through the hallway before stopping with a soft mechanical click. Benjamin stood in the kitchen, rolling up his sleeves as he plated the salmon he had prepared himself. Cassandra rarely cooked anymore. She said she didn't have time. He set 2 plates at the dining table. Cassandra entered a moment later, heels still on, phone in hand. "You didn't have to cook," she said absently, scrolling through something. "I didn't," Benjamin replied calmly. "I chose to." She set her phone face down, but not before it vibrated once. Her eyes flicked toward it. They sat across from each other. For a few minutes, there was only the soft clink of cutlery. Finally, Cassandra exhaled. "I need to talk to you about something," she began. Benjamin looked up, expression neutral. "All right." She folded her napkin carefully. "A performance." She always prepared before negotiations. "You know the Blackstone deal I've been leading?" Benjamin nodded once. Blackstone. He knew the name well. "It's at a critical stage," she continued. "Meridian is hesitating on valuation alignment. There's resistance at the advisory level." Benjamin's gaze did not change. "Go on." "Preston believes we need to reinforce trust." "Trust," Benjamin repeated evenly. "Yes." She leaned back slightly. "These mergers aren't just numbers, Benjamin. They're relationships. Influence. Perception." He waited. She inhaled. "Preston wants me to spend the night with him." The words landed softly between them, as if she had just announced a schedule change. Benjamin did not blink. Cassandra rushed to frame it. "It's not what you think," she said quickly. "This is strategic. It's optics. He needs reassurance that I'm fully aligned with leadership. The board has been watching us closely." "Us?" Benjamin asked quietly. She waved a dismissive hand. "The executive team." Benjamin took another bite of salmon. "Don't be dramatic, Benjamin," she said, her tone tightening slightly. "It's just one night with my CEO." There it was. Simple, casual, transactional. Rain tapped lightly against the windows, echoing faintly in the silence that followed. Benjamin set his fork down carefully beside his plate. He studied her face, not for emotion, for certainty. She wasn't ashamed. She was convinced. "This merger defines my career," she continued. "If Blackstone closes at our projected multiple, I'm positioned for partner track within 18 months. Do you understand what that means?" "I do," he replied. "It means leverage, influence, security for this family." The word family hovered in the air like something fragile. Benjamin's mind moved calmly through information he had already confirmed weeks ago. 12 years earlier, he had been a senior analyst reviewing irregularities in a mid-cap acquisition. The CFO at the time, Preston Griffith, had signed off on inflated forward-looking statements. Aggressive adjustments. Technical, but deliberate. Benjamin had flagged it, escalated it. The internal review that followed had nearly ended Preston's career. Nearly. Preston survived, repositioned himself, rebranded, climbed again. Benjamin had moved on, but he never forgot numbers. Or patterns. He also never forgot names. Meridian Capital had approached him 2 years ago for advisory consultation. Independent. Quiet. His role wasn't public-facing. Strategic risk oversight. When Blackstone initiated merger discussions with Meridian, Benjamin read every preliminary draft. Every clause. Every contingency. Clause 14 had been his suggestion. An ethics termination trigger. Immediate dissolution of agreement upon verified executive misconduct, including undisclosed conflicts of interest materially affecting negotiation integrity. He had phrased it clinically. Meridian's board had approved it unanimously. Blackstone's legal team had skimmed it without objection. Cassandra had celebrated the near finalization of the deal without reading past the headline valuations. Back at the dinner table, she was still speaking. "You're not exactly emotionally available lately," she said, almost defensively. "Lucas barely talks to me. You're buried in your office every night. I'm carrying everything professionally right now." Benjamin looked at her. There it was. Justification. "You think I want this?" she pressed. "I don't. But sometimes adults make uncomfortable choices. For the greater good," Benjamin said evenly. "Yes." Silence stretched again. She searched his face for anger. Accusation. Something explosive she could push against. He offered none. Instead, he picked up his water glass and took a slow sip. "How long?" he asked. "One night," she repeated firmly. "That's all. And Preston believes this ensures the merger." "It strengthens alignment," she corrected. "He trusts me. This solidifies it." Benjamin nodded once. She waited. His response did not come immediately. Finally, "Okay." The word was soft, measured. Cassandra blinked. "Okay. Yes." No raised voice. No argument. No moral lecture. Just acceptance. Relief flickered briefly across her features, though she tried to mask it. "I knew you'd understand," she said, reaching for her wine glass. "You've always been rational." "Rational." Benjamin stood and began clearing plates. Upstairs, Lucas's bedroom door closed softly. Cassandra's phone buzzed again. She didn't hesitate this time. She picked it up openly. "Preston, tomorrow night. My place. We'll finalize everything." She typed back immediately. Benjamin rinsed dishes at the sink, the steady rush of water covering the faint tapping of her thumbs. His reflection in the dark kitchen window looked unchanged. Calm, ordinary, invisible. But his mind was already moving. After Cassandra went upstairs to pack an overnight bag, something she claimed was just in case meetings run late, Benjamin walked quietly into his office. He closed the door. He opened his laptop. Meridian Capital Advisory Portal. He logged in. The merger draft appeared on screen. Clause 14 sat buried midway through the compliance framework. Unassuming. Precise. He opened a new email addressed to Meridian's compliance officer. Subject line: Preliminary ethical disclosure. Time sensitive, he did not type immediately. Instead, he checked the timestamp settings. Scheduled delivery: 6:02 a.m., the morning after Cassandra's alignment. He attached documentation already prepared. Credit card statements, photographs, call logs. He read the email once, then again. His finger hovered briefly over the trackpad. There was no anger in his chest, no rush of vengeance, only inevitability. He clicked schedule. The confirmation message appeared quietly on the screen. Benjamin leaned back in his chair. Upstairs, Cassandra laughed softly into her phone. He closed the laptop and dimmed the lights in his office, the soft glow of the screen fading to black. And in the silence of the house, Benjamin scheduled a timed compliance email. Chapter 4, Clause 14. Months before Cassandra ever said the words, "It's just one night," the trap had already been written. Not out of suspicion, not out of revenge, out of pattern recognition. The first Meridian Blackstone draft had arrived on a quiet Thursday afternoon. Benjamin had been seated in his office, reviewing mid-year projections for a separate client, when the secure advisory portal notified him of a new document upload. Proposed acquisition framework, Blackstone strategic expansion. He had opened it without urgency. The numbers were aggressive, but not reckless. Projected growth multipliers, market consolidation language, efficiency forecasts. But something else caught his attention: executive exposure. Too much concentration of decision power in a single leadership node, Preston Griffith. Benjamin leaned back slightly. He hadn't spoken Preston's name aloud in over a decade, but he remembered him clearly. 12 years earlier, during a volatile quarter, Benjamin had been tasked with auditing forward earnings estimates tied to a mid-cap acquisition Preston had championed as CFO. The revenue projections had been inflated, not dramatically, but strategically. just enough to tip board approval. Benjamin had traced the revisions line by line. He had escalated it. An internal ethics committee convened quietly. Preston's career survived, technically. He resigned voluntarily, reappeared 18 months later at another firm, rebranded as Visionary. Benjamin had learned something that year. Ambition doesn't disappear. It relocates. Back in the present, he scrolled further down the merger document. Section 8.4, Operational Oversight. Section 10, Risk Allocation. Standard language. Then Section 12, Termination Provisions. Too narrow. Too procedural. Benjamin opened a comment field and began typing calmly. Recommend insertion of expanded ethical termination clause covering executive misconduct and material conflicts impacting negotiation integrity. He paused, then drafted the language himself. Clause 14. Immediate termination upon verified ethical misconduct involving executive leadership or material conflict of interest materially affecting negotiation integrity. He added, determination subject to advisory board review and compliance validation. Clean, neutral, legally sound. He submitted the revision. 2 days later, Meridian's general counsel called. Benjamin, this Clause 14 edition, it's broader than typical. It should be, Benjamin replied evenly. You're entrusting valuation stability to personalities. Personalities introduce risk. A short pause. Do you anticipate an issue? I anticipate the possibility of one. The clause remained unchallenged. Blackstone's legal team skimmed termination language as standard risk management. No one objected. No one asked why it was necessary. Cassandra celebrated the near-final draft 3 weeks later. It's airtight, she said over dinner that night, scrolling through executive summary pages. Valuation locks. Exit contingencies protected. It's elegant. Did you read the full termination section? Benjamin asked casually. She laughed. That's what legal is for. He nodded. Preston never knew who had suggested the addition. Meridian's advisory board roles were not publicly listed. Benjamin preferred it that way. Now, months later, Cassandra stood in their bedroom, packing an overnight bag. She selected a navy silk dress carefully. Don't wait up, she said lightly. Preston wants to finalize alignment before tomorrow's pre-board call. Benjamin adjusted his cufflinks at the dresser. Of course. She paused briefly, studying him. You're sure you're fine? Yes. She searched for cracks. Found none. Her phone chimed. She smiled without thinking. I'll text when I'm done. Benjamin gave a single nod. She left at 8:17 p.m. The garage door closed with a low mechanical hum. The house fell silent. Benjamin did not follow her. He did not check her location. He did not call. He walked into his office and closed the door gently. The laptop screen illuminated his face in pale blue light. Meridian Advisory Portal. Login. Two-factor authentication. He opened the merger file again. Clause 14 sat quietly where he had placed it months ago. He opened a separate encrypted folder on his desktop. Inside, credit card statements showing private restaurant charges, boutique hotel bar receipts, timestamp call logs, screenshots of public event attendance confirming Preston's schedule overlap. Cassandra's own text messages forwarded from shared iCloud backup, archived before deletion. He reviewed each file again, not for emotion, for precision. Everything needed to be chronological, documented, verifiable. He drafted the compliance notification carefully. Subject line: ethical disclosure under Clause 14. Time-sensitive review required the body of the message remain factual. In accordance with Clause 14 of the Meridian Blackstone Acquisition Framework, this correspondence serves as preliminary notification of a verified material conflict of interest involving executive leadership of Blackstone and a senior deal representative. He attached the documentation. No accusations, no adjectives, only evidence. He saved the draft. It was 10:41 p.m. Upstairs, Lucas's bedroom light turned off. Benjamin leaned back in his chair. For a brief moment, memory flickered. Lucas in the passenger seat. Rain. A red light. Cassandra smiling at her phone. He inhaled slowly, then reopened the draft. He added one final line. Supporting documentation attached for immediate compliance review upon business hours commencement. He clicked Schedule Send. Delivery options appeared. Immediate. Custom time. He selected Custom. 6:02 a.m. He chose the exact minute the Meridian Compliance Office opened internal review channels. Early enough to intercept pre-market calls. Late enough that Cassandra's night could not be undone. He hovered over confirmation for a second. This was not revenge. It was consequence. He clicked. A small notification appeared in the corner of the screen. Message scheduled successfully. Benjamin closed the compliance portal. He powered down the laptop halfway, then stopped. He reopened it briefly. One more check. Clause 14 remained unchanged. Active. Enforceable. He shut the screen completely. Upstairs, the house remained still. Somewhere across the city, Cassandra was likely laughing softly under low penthouse lighting, believing she was securing her future. Benjamin stood from his desk and turned off the office lamp. The only illumination left came from the faint glow of the scheduled message icon, waiting silently in the outbox queue. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. No anger, no regret, only timing. Behind him, the laptop screen dimmed to black. On it, a single line remained queued in silence. Timestamp. 6:02 a.m. Compliance notification sent. Chapter 5 Detonation. At 6:02 a.m., Cassandra was still asleep in Preston's penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a pale Manhattan sunrise. The city looked quiet from 40 stories up, muted, almost gentle. Her phone began vibrating against the marble nightstand. Once, twice, then continuously. She groaned, eyes half open, reaching for it lazily. 8 missed calls. 3 from legal, 2 from investor relations, 1 from Diane Kepler, and 1 from Preston, even though he was in the bathroom. Her stomach tightened. The bathroom door swung open. Preston stepped out, tying his robe, irritation already etched into his face as he glanced at his own buzzing phone. "What the hell?" he muttered. He read something on the screen. His expression shifted. Confusion, then disbelief, then fury. He stormed toward her, phone clutched in his hand. "What did you do?" he demanded. Cassandra sat up fully. "What are you talking about?" He shoved the screen toward her. An email header glared back. Subject: Ethical disclosure under Clause 14. Immediate termination. Trigger. Her eyes scanned downward rapidly. Meridian Compliance Office. Verified material conflict of interest involving executive leadership and senior deal representative. Attached documentation under review. Effective immediate suspension of merger execution pending investigation. Cassandra blinked. "That's not possible," she whispered. Preston's face turned red. "Blackstone acquisition is finished. Who the hell is your husband?" The words echoed off the glass walls. She stared at him. "What?" He paced violently now. Meridian's advisory board invoked Clause 14. They cited documented conflict of interest, including personal involvement with you. They have time-stamped evidence. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Clause 14, she repeated faintly. Termination upon ethical misconduct. Do you even read your own contracts? She opened her mouth, closed it. Her phone buzzed again. Market alert notification. Blackstone pre-market shares down 4.7%. Investor commentary. Meridian deal suspended amid ethics review. "No," she breathed. "This can't be happening." Preston turned on her fully. "Who is your husband connected to at Meridian?" "He's not. He works independently. Don't lie to me." Preston snapped. Her mind raced. "Benjamin. Calm. Unemotional. Okay." The word echoed in her memory like a gunshot. Preston's phone rang again. He answered sharply. "Yes, I've seen it. Get legal in the boardroom in 20 minutes." He ended the call and glared at her. "If this traces back to you, it doesn't," she insisted. "Then explain how Meridian knew. Explain how they had private communication logs." Her throat fell dry. "I didn't send anything." He studied her face for weakness. "Found it. Get dressed," he ordered. "You're coming to the office." By 7:45 a.m., Blackstone's executive boardroom was filled. Legal counsel, compliance officers, 2 outside advisors. Diane Kepler sat at the far end of the table, expression unreadable. Preston slammed a printed copy of the compliance notice onto the glass surface. Meridian is alleging executive misconduct tied to conflict of interest between myself and Ms. Harrington. Every eye in the room shifted to Cassandra. She felt suddenly small under the fluorescent lighting. "This is a misinterpretation," she said carefully. Professional alignment discussions were framed incorrectly. "Professional?" Diane asked coolly. Cassandra swallowed. The general counsel adjusted his glasses. "They've attached documentation. Call logs, credit card records, private meeting confirmations." Preston stared at her. "You told me you were careful." "I was." A junior analyst rushed in, whispering something to investor relations. Preston demanded, "What now?" "Media inquiries," the analyst replied nervously. Financial press picked up the pre-market halt. Preston ran a hand through his hair violently. "Get ahead of it." Diane leaned forward slightly. "There's more." The room quieted. Meridian's advisory board member who submitted the trigger notification, she continued. "Benjamin Harrington." Cassandra's heart stopped. The name landed like a physical blow. Preston's head snapped toward her. "That's your husband?" Silence. "Yes," she whispered. Preston's face twisted. "You said he was in private consulting." "He is. He sits on Meridian's advisory board." Her breathing grew shallow. "I didn't know." The words felt thin. Preston laughed harshly. "You didn't know your husband had authority over the deal you're leading?" The stock ticker on the wall screen flickered again. Down 7.2%. Investor sell-off accelerating. Preston slammed his fist against the table. "This is catastrophic." The general counsel spoke carefully. "Under Clause 14, Meridian can terminate immediately if ethical misconduct materially impacts negotiation integrity. The documentation suggests concealment." Diane's gaze remained fixed on Cassandra. "Did you disclose your relationship to Preston to your spouse?" she asked quietly. Cassandra's mouth opened. Closed. Preston answered for her. "No." The boardroom felt airless. Preston pointed at her. "You've compromised a multi-billion-dollar acquisition." She shook her head weakly. "You asked me to." "Don't," he snapped. "Don't you dare shift this onto me." Phones continued buzzing around the room. Assistant voices filtered in from the hallway. "CNBC wants comment. Bloomberg is asking if termination is confirmed." Preston's shoulders sagged slightly for the first time. "Get her out," he muttered. Cassandra stared at him. "Preston, get her out," he repeated, colder now. Security did not escort her, but the implication was clear. She gathered her bags slowly. As she stepped out of the boardroom, she heard him say quietly to legal counsel, "Find out everything about Benjamin Harrington." At 9:12 a.m., Benjamin sat in his home office. He wore a charcoal suit, neatly pressed. His phone rested on the desk beside him. Unread notifications stacked silently. He opened a different tab. Family law attorney. Prepared draft documents. He reviewed them once more. Legal separation filing. Asset protection measures. Temporary financial freezes. He signed electronically. Next, he contacted the trustee managing the family estate. "I'm invoking the morality clause under Article 7, he said calmly. A pause on the other end. "Are you certain?" "Yes." Documentation. Already forwarded. Within 30 minutes, Cassandra's access to the primary estate account was suspended pending review. Benjamin then flagged disputed credit charges tied to boutique hotels and private dining under marital asset misuse. No anger, just forms, structured requests, precise language. At 10:03 a.m., Cassandra called. He let ring once, then answered. "What did you do?" she demanded, voice trembling. "I enforced a contract," he replied evenly. "You destroyed my career." "No," he said quietly. "You did." Silence stretched. "How long?" she whispered. "Long enough." She breathed unevenly. "You never said anything. You never asked." Her voice cracked. "You set this up. I protected my interests." "And Lucas?" She shot back desperately. Benjamin's tone remained steady. Lucas needed stability. On the other end, she began to understand the scope. The advisory board, the clause, the documentation, the timing. Every detail aligned too cleanly to be accidental. You knew, she said slowly. Yes. A long pause. In the background, she could hear newsroom chatter from the Blackstone office. Her career dissolving in real time. You're not who I thought you were, she whispered. Benjamin looked at the framed photo on his desk, Lucas before the accident, smiling in his soccer uniform. No, he agreed quietly. Across the city, investors panicked. Press headlines spread. Boardroom scrambled. And standing alone in a corporate hallway, phone pressed to her ear, Cassandra realized. She never knew her husband. Chapter 6, The Investigation. The collapse of the merger was only the first tremor. The earthquake came 3 days later. Blackstone's executive floor, once humming with calculated confidence, now carried the brittle silence of legal review. Doors stayed closed. Assistants spoke in whispers. Every conversation felt recorded. Cassandra sat alone in a smaller conference room at the end of the corridor, waiting. Her phone had been taken temporarily by compliance. Her email access restricted. Her name removed from 2 scheduled investor calls. The door opened precisely at 9:00 a.m. Diane Kepler entered without hurry. Managing partner. Controlled. Impeccable. Untouchable. She closed the door behind her and placed a slim black folder on the table. Good morning, Cassandra. Cassandra attempted composure. Diane, I assume this is about Meridian's overreaction. Diane did not sit immediately. Overreaction, she repeated lightly, then took her seat. That's one interpretation. Cassandra crossed her arms. This was a private matter weaponized by my husband. Diane's eyes sharpened slightly. No, she said calmly. It was a professional liability exposed by your husband. The air thickened. Diane opened the folder. Inside were tabs. Color-coded. Organized. This investigation did not begin with Clause 14, Diane continued. It began long before. Cassandra felt something shift beneath her. What are you talking about? Diane slid the first document across the table. Time-stamped internal email chains. 3 years old. Subject. Risk Allocation Framework. Revised Model Integration. Cassandra's stomach tightened. You remember this, Diane said. It was my model, Cassandra replied quickly. I designed the adaptive risk weighting. Diane tilted her head slightly. Did you? She slid another document forward. An older file. Metadata intact. Author. Benjamin Harrington. Creation date. 11 years prior. Cassandra's breath caught. That's impossible. Diane folded her hands. Your husband published a proprietary risk assessment framework through a private advisory channel. It was not public domain, but it was circulated among institutional partners. Cassandra stared at the screen capture in disbelief. You submitted a nearly identical structure 2 years later, Diane continued, with minor cosmetic changes. That's coincidence, Cassandra said sharply. Diane didn't blink. No, it's not. She opened another tab in the folder. Bonus statements. Year 1, $1.3 million. Year 2, $1.6 million. Year 3, $1.8 million. Performance incentives directly attributed to the Harrington Adaptive Risk Model. The name on the internal award documentation read Cassandra Harrington. You generated approximately $4.7 million in performance bonuses tied directly to that model, Diane said evenly. A model you did not design. Cassandra felt heat rise in her face. I refined it, she insisted. I improved it. You repackaged it. Silence stretched between them. Diane leaned back slightly. I have documented irregularities tied to your conduct for 3 years. Cassandra's pulse pounded. Why didn't you say anything? Because until now, they were internal matters. Ethical gray areas. This is not gray anymore. She closed the folder softly. The Ethics Committee has opened a formal review. By noon, the compliance office was in full operation. 3 external auditors were present. Blackstone's general counsel sat in a corner office reviewing past communications. Word had spread quickly. Mid-level managers avoided eye contact when Cassandra walked past. She was escorted politely into another conference room. This time, Preston was already inside. He looked different, less polished, more volatile. What now? He muttered as she entered. Before she could respond, Diane and 2 compliance officers joined them. Effective immediately, Diane began. Both of you are subject to executive conduct review. Preston's jaw tightened. This is absurd. Your prior employment record has also been flagged, Diane continued calmly. Preston's eyes flashed. What record? She placed another document on the table. An archived internal memo from 12 years ago. Forward-looking earnings adjustments. Inflated reporting. Signed by Preston Griffith. Cassandra looked at him sharply. You told me that was resolved. It was, he snapped. It was administrative. It was falsification, Diane corrected. Minimally prosecuted at the time, due to internal containment. The room fell silent. With the renewed scrutiny triggered by Clause 14, Meridian's advisory board forwarded historical risk flags, Diane added. Preston leaned forward aggressively. This is a coordinated attack. No, Diane replied. It's exposure. Phones outside the room buzzed constantly. Investor confidence was eroding by the hour. Legal counsel re-entered briefly. 2 institutional clients have requested written clarification regarding governance failures. Diane nodded once. And one of them is threatening coordinated litigation. Preston's face drained. Cassandra whispered, litigation? Yes, Diane said. A class action suit based on conflict of interest damages is being drafted. Estimated exposure numbers were already circulating internally. $2.8 million. Possibly $3.2 million with penalties. Cassandra felt dizzy. You're going to fight this, she said to Preston urgently. He didn't answer. Diane stood. Given the cumulative findings, undisclosed executive conflict, intellectual property misappropriation, historical reporting irregularities, the board has requested resignations. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Preston exploded first. I built this division. You compromised it, Diane said without raising her voice. Cassandra looked between them helplessly. You can't just... We can, Diane replied. A formal document was placed in front of each of them. Voluntary resignation. Immediate effect. Non-disparagement clause. Compliance cooperation requirement. Preston stared at his paper as if it were written in another language. Cassandra's hands trembled slightly. Outside, financial news tickers began speculating about governance instability at Blackstone. By late afternoon, Cassandra's name appeared in 2 online financial blogs. By evening, it was trending in executive forums. Conflict of interest, ethics breach, merger sabotage. Her phone, once confiscated, was returned with limited access. It vibrated nonstop. Unknown numbers. Private messages. One texted out. From an old colleague. Is it true? She didn't respond. At 7:40 p.m., as she sat alone in her darkened office packing personal belongings into a cardboard box, an assistant knocked lightly on the glass. There's a media inquiry, the assistant said hesitantly. From who? Cassandra asked, her voice thin. The assistant swallowed. From the Wall Street Journal. Chapter 7, Public Reckoning. The article went live at 6:14 a.m. Cassandra saw it before she got out of bed. Her phone buzzed with the kind of vibration that didn't stop, notification after notification stacking over one another until the screen looked like a collapsing tower of headlines. She opened the link with trembling fingers. The masthead sat heavy and authoritative at the top. The Wall Street Journal inside the collapse of the Blackstone Meridian deal. Ethics clause triggers executive fallout. Her name appeared in the 3rd paragraph. Not as a strategist, not as a rising partner, but as the axis of failure. The article was clinical, ruthlessly structured. It outlined the timeline. Pre-market halt, Clause 14 invocation, documented conflict of interest between a senior deal representative and Blackstone CEO. It referenced internal sources confirming that the trigger came from a Meridian advisory board member, Benjamin Harrington, her husband. The phrasing was devastating in its restraint. Sources close to the investigation suggest that personal and professional boundaries were blurred during critical merger negotiations, resulting in an enforceable ethics breach under Clause 14. Blurred. Enforceable. Breach. Her throat tightened as she kept reading. It detailed the internal ethics review, the resignation of both executives, and potential exposure to investor litigation estimated between $2.80 and $3.2 million. Then came the line that felt like a blade. Industry observers note that the termination clause was introduced months earlier at the recommendation of a Meridian Advisory Board member specializing in risk governance. Benjamin. He hadn't spoken publicly. He hadn't defended himself. He hadn't attacked her. He had simply existed in the structure of the story. Clean, precise, unemotional. By noon, the piece had been syndicated across financial news aggregators. Cable panels dissected the language of Clause 14. On one screen, a commentator said, "This is a textbook example of governance mechanisms working as designed." On another, a former compliance officer added, "It's rare to see such airtight documentation." Whoever structured that clause anticipated risk far beyond the obvious. Cassandra muted the television. Her email inbox flooded with subject lines. Clarification request comment? Statement needed. She typed nothing. At a glass-walled lecture hall in Boston, a professor at Harvard Business School adjusted his glasses and projected the article onto a screen. Today's discussion, he began, focuses on ethics triggers in high-value mergers. A slide appeared. Case study. Clause 14, governance versus personal conduct. A student raised her hand. Wasn't this avoidable if disclosures were transparent? Yes, the professor replied. But the lesson here is structural. Clause 14 didn't punish infidelity. It punished undisclosed conflict impacting fiduciary duty. Another student leaned forward. The husband was on the advisory board? Yes. A murmur spread across the room. So he built the trap? No, the professor corrected gently. He built risk mitigation. The misconduct activated it. 2 states away, at Wharton School, the case appeared in a governance seminar under the title, "Spousal Power Ignorance and Executive Miscalculation." A student summarized aloud. She underestimated her husband's influence. The professor nodded. She underestimated the structure. By evening, finance professionals on social platforms had turned the clause into shorthand. Clause 14 began trending within executive circles. Posts ranged from sarcastic to analytical. Always read termination clauses. Governance wins. Personal risk equals corporate risk. Cassandra stared at the hashtag on her screen. Her name appeared beside it repeatedly. Conflict of interest. Executive misconduct. Spousal power ignorance. She closed the app. Benjamin's phone buzzed too, but differently. Requests for interviews. Commentary invitations. Private messages from former colleagues. He declined them all. No comment. He replied via a short email template drafted by his attorney. When a financial podcast requested an on-record explanation of Clause 14 structure, he forwarded the message to legal counsel. No interviews, he repeated calmly. Instead, he released documentation. Through official channels only. Redacted call logs. Time-stamped compliance notices. Contract excerpts. Nothing emotional. Nothing interpretive. Just evidence. When one reporter attempted to frame it as revenge, Benjamin's legal representative responded with a single sentence. Clause 14 was drafted as a governance safeguard. Its activation followed documented ethical breach. That was all. At home, the atmosphere remained restrained. Lucas sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his tablet. He had seen the article too. "Dad," he asked quietly, "are they talking about Mom at school?" Benjamin paused. "Yes." Lucas nodded once. She shouldn't have lied. Benjamin didn't respond immediately. "No," he said finally. Upstairs, Cassandra stood alone in the master bedroom, reading comment threads she shouldn't have opened. Some were cruel, some analytical, none sympathetic. Her phone buzzed again, this time from her mother. "We need to talk." Another from her father. "Call us." She didn't. The following morning, Benjamin sat at his desk reviewing correspondence. One message stood out. A neutral inquiry from a journalist asking whether he would be attending Thanksgiving with Cassandra's family, as usual. He stared at it for a moment, then opened a blank email. He addressed it not to a journalist, but to Cassandra's parents. Subject: Thanksgiving. The message was brief. "I believe transparency is important. Given recent events, I think it would be appropriate for us to gather as planned. There are matters you deserve to understand fully. I can provide documentation." He attached nothing. Yet, he read the message once. then sent it. Across town, Cassandra's phone chimed seconds later with a forwarded copy from her mother. "Your father says we're keeping Thanksgiving," the text read. Cassandra sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. The public reckoning had begun in print. Now, it was moving towards something more personal. And that evening, as the autumn light faded beyond the windows, a Thanksgiving invitation was sent to Cassandra's parents. Chapter 8, Thanksgiving. The house smelled like rosemary, butter, and tension. 23 relatives filled the long dining room, voices overlapping in forced cheerfulness. Silverware clinked against china. Wine glasses caught the soft amber glow of chandelier light. At the head of the table sat Colonel Richard Hale, retired Marine Corps, posture still rigid despite his civilian sweater. His hair had gone silver years ago, but nothing about him had softened. Cassandra sat halfway down the table, hands folded tightly in her lap. Benjamin sat beside Lucas, who maneuvered his wheelchair carefully into place at the extended end of the table. A custom adjustment had been made to the table leg to accommodate him. Benjamin had installed it himself that morning. The evidence packet had been delivered 3 days earlier. Certified mail. No commentary. Just documentation. Cassandra's mother had called twice since then. Her father had not called at all. Dinner began with ritual. Prayer. Polite conversation. Her aunt asked Lucas about school. Her cousin commented on the cold weather. No one mentioned the headlines, but everyone had read them. Halfway through the meal, Colonel Hale set his fork down deliberately. The sound cut through the room. Conversations faded. He stood slowly. The chair legs scraped against hardwood with military finality. "I will not pretend," he said evenly, "that we are unaware of why this year feels different." Silence. Cassandra's throat tightened. "Before tonight," he continued, "I received documentation from Benjamin." He held up a thin stack of printed pages. I reviewed it carefully. Cassandra's voice came out strained. "Dad, this isn't—" He raised a hand. "Not yet." His eyes swept the table, 23 faces now fixed on him. He began reading. Timeline. 7 months ago. Vehicle collision at intersection of 8th and Mercer. Police statement filed by Cassandra Harrington states brake malfunction. He lowered the page. Attached mechanical report confirms braking system fully operational. A murmur rippled faintly through the room. Cassandra felt heat flood her face. Text message logs. Her father continued, flipping to another page. Timestamp 6:41 p.m. Incoming message from Preston Griffith. Response sent at 6:42 p.m. Collision recorded at 6:43 p.m. The air felt thinner. Lucas stared at his plate. Her father's voice did not waver. Insurance statement lists mechanical failure. No disclosure of phone use. Cassandra shook her head weakly. "Dad, it wasn't— You didn't mean to run the light?" he asked quietly. Silence. "You didn't mean to lie to your husband? To the police? To your insurer?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Her cousin looked away. Her father turned another page. Executive misconduct review. Conflict of interest with CEO during active merger negotiations. Failure to disclose spousal advisory role. He lowered the paper slowly. Then he looked directly at her. "You endangered your son for a text message." The words landed with devastating clarity. No one moved. No one defended her. Cassandra's breathing grew shallow. "I made a mistake," she whispered. Colonel Hale's jaw tightened. "A mistake is forgetting an appointment. A mistake is misplacing keys. You chose distraction. You chose deception." Repeatedly. Benjamin said nothing. He sat still, one hand resting lightly on Lucas's shoulder. Cassandra looked at her son. "Lucas, sweetheart, He did not lift his eyes. Her father folded the papers neatly. "You will not disrespect this family further by pretending this is a misunderstanding." She blinked rapidly. "You're choosing him over me?" Her father's voice softened, but only slightly. "I'm choosing accountability." Her chair creaked as she shifted. "Dad, please. You need to leave." The sentence was calm. Absolute. Her mother inhaled sharply. "Richard." He did not look away from Cassandra. "You will not sit at this table tonight." The room remained frozen. Cassandra stared around the table as if someone might intervene. No one did. Her aunt avoided eye contact. Her brother stared down at his folded hands. Lucas remained motionless. Cassandra stood slowly. "I'm still your daughter," she said, voice cracking. "Yes," her father replied. "And you're still responsible for what you've done." She looked at Benjamin. For something. Anger. Pity. He gave her neither. She walked toward the hallway, heels striking the floor too loudly in the silence. At the doorway, she paused. "Lucas," she tried once more. He did not look up. The door closed behind her. The sound echoed through the house like a gavel. Dinner resumed eventually. Voices returned cautiously, but something fundamental had shifted. After dessert, as relatives gathered coats and leftovers were packed into foil containers, Colonel Hale approached Benjamin quietly. "You handled this with restraint," he said. Benjamin inclined his head slightly. "I handled it with documentation." The colonel studied him for a moment. "You'll need structure moving forward." "I'm aware." Upstairs later that night, the house was quiet again. Lucas sat on the edge of his bed while Benjamin adjusted the support brace near his legs. "Does it hurt?" Benjamin asked. "A little." Benjamin finished securing it. Lucas stared at the wall for a long moment. "I don't want her erased," he said finally. Benjamin paused. "I just don't trust her." The honesty in his voice was fragile but steady. Benjamin sat down in the chair beside him. "You don't have to erase someone to protect yourself," he said quietly. Lucas nodded once. "Will I have to see her?" "Yes." "Ow." "Supervised." Lucas considered that. "Okay." Downstairs, Benjamin opened his laptop. He drafted a formal proposal through his attorney. Temporary custody structure. Primary residence with father. Supervised visitation twice weekly at certified family center. No unsupervised travel. No overnight stays. Clear boundaries. Clear documentation. He reviewed it once, then forwarded it to legal counsel for filing. Upstairs, Lucas turned off his bedside lamp. The house settled into silence again, and before midnight, a supervised visitation agreement was drafted. Chapter 9, Recovery. The first check from the settlement cleared just after sunrise. Benjamin sat at his office desk, the city just waking beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The figure of Manhattan shimmered faintly through the morning haze. He tapped the calculator softly, confirming totals, then drafted the transfer instructions. Nearly $6 million. Not for luxury, not for indulgence. For Lucas. For progress. For second chances. Weeks later, the first experimental spinal program began. Lucas lay on the rehabilitation table, muscles tense, nerves alert. Machines whirred softly around him. "All right, Lucas," said Dr. Elena Mercer, the lead neurologist, "we start slow. Just 3 assisted steps. Can you do that for me?" Lucas's lips pressed together. He nodded. Benjamin stood at the edge of the room, hands clasped behind his back, calm but alert. Cassandra was seated across the room, supervised, notebook in hand, instructed not to interfere. "Ready?" Dr. Mercer asked. Lucas inhaled deeply. Benjamin held the support bar. 1, he lifted slightly. 2, the third step a wobble. Lucas's foot slipped. He fell into the harness. Benjamin was there immediately, steadying him. "Try again," he said softly. "You can do it." Cassandra watched silently, jaw tight, eyes widening with each failed attempt. "I will," Lucas whispered. Over the following weeks, the therapy room became a battlefield of small victories. 3 steps, 5, 10. Each session a mixture of falls and corrections. Each repetition programmed into the growing database Benjamin and Dr. Mercer maintained meticulously. Benjamin tracked progress down to the millimeter, recording gait angles, foot placement, and stride velocity. He made no notes about his emotions, only numbers and milestones. One afternoon, Lucas beamed after successfully walking 10 feet with assistance. "I did it," he exclaimed. "You did," Benjamin agreed, voice calm, eyes steady. He adjusted Lucas's brace and gait harness. "Now rest. Tomorrow we try 15 feet. Cassandra glanced at him, then looked away. She was allowed observation only, no touch, no encouragement beyond words approved by therapy staff. She tried to speak, but Benjamin's firm glance silenced her. The boundaries were clear. Accountability remained. Stem cell therapy followed. In a sterile, softly lit room, Lucas sat on the treatment table, small arms crossed, while Dr. Mercer and her team prepared the infusion. "Will it hurt?" Lucas asked. "Just a pinch," Benjamin reassured him. He placed a gentle hand on Lucas's shoulder, steadying him. "You'll feel a little pressure, then nothing. This is your body learning to heal." After the infusion, exercises resumed. Micro movements, muscle conditioning, repetition. Recovery was deliberate, slow, but measurable. Cassandra watched silently from the observation room, tracking every angle through a glass partition. Her fingers twisted in her lap. She could see progress, but she could not participate. 8 months into the program, the moment came. Lucas was standing, 3 feet from the therapy mat to the parallel bars. Benjamin positioned him, adjusting the braces. "Remember, slow. Focus on your balance." Lucas inhaled. "I can do it." "Then do it," Benjamin said. 3 steps. He wobbled. Fell. Benjamin steadied him. Again, he encouraged. Lucas got up. 1 step. 2. 3. Then 4. He fell again, but the next attempt, he made it 5 steps, then 10 with assistance. The therapist, Benjamin, and even the observation team celebrated softly. Progression montage. 3 steps, 10 steps assisted. 10, 20 feet with harness support. 20 feet unassisted on good days. Balance exercises incorporated. Squats, arm swings, braces gradually loosened. Benjamin kept a detailed chart of each day's metrics. Strides per session, fall rate, recovery speed. Cassandra's visits were timed. She could only observe approved exercises. She could see Lucas's improvement. She could see Benjamin's methodical orchestration. She could not interfere. She could not accelerate the process. One afternoon, Lucas walked 20 feet unassisted across the therapy room. Cassandra's eyes widened, but she remained quiet, biting her lip. She had no words. She had no influence. She was a spectator to her son's recovery and her own irrelevance. Benjamin's calm approach never wavered. No applause beyond encouragement for Lucas. No words toward Cassandra. Clean, precise, unemotional. Each session followed a rhythm of repetition, recovery, and documentation. Benjamin adjusted treatments based on micrometrics. Foot rotation, knee torque, stride symmetry. He applied every scientific advance from the settlement-funded programs. Lucas grew stronger, more confident. Small victories accumulated into a measurable upward trend. Cassandra whispered quietly to herself during one session, "He's doing it." Benjamin simply nodded, making notes on his tablet. "I know," he said softly, without looking up. Lucas laughed, wobbling on his feet. "I'm standing." "You are," Benjamin confirmed. "Now walk." Lucas took a few steps unassisted, stumbled slightly, then regained balance. Each time, Benjamin reinforced technique calmly, never scolding, never celebrating excessively. Only structure, only measurable progress. By late evening, with therapy concluded, Benjamin guided Lucas across the living room at home. No braces, no harness, no assistance. Lucas's eyes sparkled. I'm doing it, Dad." Benjamin's face remained calm, almost clinical, but his hand rested lightly on Lucas's back, steadying him only if necessary. "You're doing it yourself," he said. The boy's small legs carried him fully across the room. First steps, then second, then the full span. He stopped at the other side, breath quick, chest rising. Benjamin nodded once. "Good. Rest now. Tomorrow we repeat and refine." Lucas smiled widely, triumphant. For the first time in years, the wheelchair sat and used in the corner of the room. Cassandra had been allowed to watch, as usual, during her supervised visit. She remained at the threshold, silent, witnessing the moment she could not influence, could not reclaim. Her son had achieved what she cannot grant. Her absence of responsibility had been measured against his determination and his father's methodical guidance. Lucas turned toward Benjamin, beaming. "I did it." "Yes," Benjamin said evenly, yet warmth touched his voice lightly, a rare inflection. "You did it yourself." He stepped back, letting Lucas move freely. The boy's stride grew steadier, balance firm. confidence expanding. Across the room, Benjamin's gaze lingered only briefly on the small, discarded wheelchair. The past had been painful, but the future was becoming measurable. Structure, persistence, and accountability were creating progress. And in that precise, calculated moment, Lucas Harrington walked across the living room unaided. Chapter 10, Second Chance. 2 years had passed since the collapse of the Blackstone Meridian merger, since the headlines, since the fractures that had reshaped their family. Manhattan's skyline had shifted subtly in that time. New cranes, new towers, but for Benjamin Harrington, the real construction had been far more personal. The morning air carried a crisp edge, bright with winter sunlight. Outside the renovated brick building at the edge of the city, families gathered, parking lot crowded with SUVs and small sedans. Children in braces and wheelchairs moved toward the wide glass doors, accompanied by parents and caregivers. Volunteers checked off names on clipboards. Everyone looked nervous, excited, hopeful. Inside, banners hung from a ceiling. Second Chance Foundation empowering recovery. Building Futures. Benjamin moved through the foyer with calm precision. His suit pressed, tie straight, hands folded behind his back. He checked the signage, confirmed seating arrangements, and scanned the crowd. Volunteers were in place. Media crews had been vetted and instructed. Nothing would deviate from plan. Lucas, now 13, was beside him in a modified orthotic harness. The braces were lighter than the ones Benjamin had used 2 years prior. His gait was steady, confident. He grinned. "Ready, Lucas?" Benjamin asked. "I'm ready," the boy said. Cassandra stood at the very back of the room. She had asked to attend after long negotiations. She was allowed entry, but kept to the shadows, a silent observer, barred from the podium or from approaching the children. No spotlight, no recognition. She wore a conservative coat, hands clasped nervously, eyes flicking to Lucas but never meeting Benjamin's. Benjamin ignored her entirely. He didn't need to. The event was about mission, not memory. The opening ceremony began. A volunteer introduced the foundation's objectives. "Our mission is simple," the voice said, warm but measured. "Free spinal rehabilitation for children, access to experimental therapies, family counseling, and educational grant for those who need a second chance to live fully." Applause rippled through the room. Lucas clutched Benjamin's hand, eyes bright. Benjamin stepped to the podium next. He cleared his throat, scanning the audience, families, doctors, volunteers, and a small contingent of press. 2 years ago, he began, voice calm, even, "My family faced a crisis that changed everything. My son's accident revealed fragilities in both body and system. Opportunities to recover were limited. Costs were prohibitive. Too many children face barriers that could be overcome with the right support." He paused briefly. Lucas squeezed his hand. "This foundation exists to remove those barriers," Benjamin continued. "To give children access to therapies that could change their lives. To support families emotionally and financially. To provide education and hope where before there was only struggle." A photographer clicked repeatedly. Parents nodded. Volunteers whispered words of encouragement to the children around them. Benjamin gestured toward Lucas. "And to my son, Lucas. He is living proof of what patience, structure, and persistence can achieve. He walks today because of meticulous rehabilitation, experimental therapy, and unwavering support." Lucas stepped forward, confident now, braces minimal, harness gone. He took a deep breath and faced the audience. "The best response to someone trying to destroy you isn't revenge," he said, voice steady, carrying through the hall. "It's building something better." The room erupted into applause. Children clapped, parents cheered, some wiped away tears. Lucas smiled, looking briefly at Benjamin, who nodded. Calm, precise, controlled, pride contained, purpose expressed. After the applause settled, Benjamin guided the first family onto the rehabilitation demonstration floor. Volunteers introduced them to the therapy equipment. Children began trials on parallel bars, balance beams, and microstimulation devices. Therapists demonstrated exercises. Parents were shown how to continue progress at home. Cassandra remained in the back row, quietly observing. Her face was pale, her hands clasped tightly. She realized she could not participate, could not speak, could not reclaim the narrative. The foundation was built entirely on resources sourced from the settlements that had arisen due to her own misconduct. Every dollar reflected consequences she had triggered. She looked at Lucas moving steadily along the parallel bars. She saw him laugh when he succeeded in a set of balance exercises. She saw Benjamin guide, instruct, correct, and encourage without anger, without indulgence, without spectacle. Her eyes filled, but there was no space for intervention. Throughout the day, media crews filmed the therapy rooms, parents interviewed volunteers, and testimonials were recorded. Benjamin circulated silently, observing logistics. He corrected minor errors without confrontation, provided subtle guidance to ensure efficiency, and monitored Lucas intermittently. At one point, a journalist approached him with a question about the past, the merger, Clause 14, the collapse. Benjamin smiled faintly, but shook his head. This day is about the children, not the past. The foundation exists to move forward. The journalist nodded, understanding the unspoken weight. Lunch was served in the adjoining hall. Children ate sandwiches, juice boxes, and fruit while therapists and volunteers supervised. Lucas sat beside Benjamin, chatting with other kids, describing his progress in walking and exercises. Cassandra lingered near the back. Occasionally, her eyes met Lucas's, and he glanced back briefly. There was no recognition in his look, only acknowledgement. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. He understood his boundaries. Benjamin watched him, calm, but his mind cataloged the progress, noting exercises for future adjustments. Every metric, every achievement, every micro-victory recorded. The afternoon concluded with a short Q&A. Parents asked about therapy accessibility, funding, eligibility. Benjamin responded with clarity and precision, citing protocols, program metrics, and structured approaches. Cassandra listened quietly. She realized that the foundation she watched in operation was completely independent of her. She had no role, no influence. She was a visitor in a system her own actions had indirectly funded. At the final moments of the ceremony, Benjamin guided Lucas to the podium again. "Lucas," he said softly, "any closing words?" The boy stepped forward. His gaze swept the room, past the children, the parents, and finally to the cameras. "The best response to someone trying to destroy you isn't revenge," Lucas said, voice strong, unwavering. "It's building something better." Applause rang out, heartfelt and sincere. Tears glistened on parents' cheeks. Volunteers smiled, some wiping hand across their eyes. Lucas beamed. Benjamin placed a hand lightly on his son's shoulder. No words, no fanfare, just recognition of effort, progress, and achievement. Cassandra remained in the back row, unnoticed by most, unable to step forward, unable to reclaim authority. The crowd's attention never shifted to her. She was powerless in the presence of what had been carefully, meticulously, deliberately built. Benjamin did not look at her. Not once. He didn't need to. She understood without his gaze. The cameras continued filming, capturing the joy, the triumph, the structure, and the purpose. For Cassandra, that day crystallized everything she had lost. Her betrayal, her misjudgment, her recklessness, and her concealment had led to this. The consequences of a single night had rippled across 2 years, shaping lives beyond her own. And at the close of the ceremony, standing amidst applause and the smiles of children reclaiming mobility and hope, the final truth settled quietly, firmly. She thought it was just one night. It became a lifetime of consequence.